And we're live, coming to you virtually connecting with ELI 2019, the EDUCAUSE Learning Initiative Conference on Academic Technologies. I'm Joe Murphy. I'm the director of the Center for Innovative Pedagogy at Kenyon College. And would our on-site folks introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm Nate Angel, and I'm here as the virtually connecting on-site buddy. And I am just going to step out of the frame after this, but why don't we introduce ourselves by having the front row go first and then the back row.
Okay. I'm Maria Gallardo Williams. I am from North Carolina State University, and I'm going to be presenting tomorrow on virtual reality chemistry labs.
I am Laura Gogia. I'm a senior design strategist. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I'm senior design strategist at iDesign. And I'm going to be presenting with Whitney on a digital escape room.
Yeah, in just a few hours.
That's right.
Yeah, hopefully we escape from that. Hi, I'm Whitney Kilgore, co-founder and chief academic officer at iDesign, and super excited to be Laura's Vanna White for her big session this afternoon.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of arm waving. It'll be great. Krista Gallion, I'm VP of LX Design at iDesign, and I am here to support Laura in the audience.
With a lot of
during her presentation.
I'm feeling a lot of love right now. There's a lot of love. And I'm Carly Bourne. I'm an academic technologist and liberal arts advisor at Carleton College. I have a couple of presentations here this time. I just finished co-leading a discussion circle on women in academic technology leadership. And tomorrow I'm co-presenting with a faculty member in religion on Zen and the art of gamification.
And I really wanted to jump in and say your session was great, but I wanted to wait until you finished.
Okay.
Because I learned something.
Good. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
All right, well, I'll jump in and introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Autumn Keynes. I am an instructional designer at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I'm also a co-director of Virtually Connecting.
I think I'm next. I'm Bethany Smith. I am also at the conference, but I am in my hotel room. I am the Associate Director of Instructional Technology Training at NC State. And I gave a poster session today about our faculty fellows, of which Maria Gallardo Williams, who is downstairs, is one of our faculty fellows. She may have been in the past, but she will always be a faculty fellow to us.
That's awesome. My name is Clarissa Sorensen Unruh, and I am at Central New Mexico Community College. I'm a chemistry instructor, and I do a whole bunch of things, include being part of Virtually Connecting.
Hi, this is Greg Dillon. I'm an instructional designer in Boston, and I'm really excited to be connecting with you all and hearing about the conference.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. I'm so glad we could get some time and be together. And I just like to ask you what you're learning at the conference. I kind of like to kick it off that way. What are some of your new things that you're thinking about?
Big takeaway so far, don't put the food by the posters. Do we go right there first and get that out of the way?
Yeah.
Probably the other thing is really in the Women in Leadership session. It was really fantastic the way we were able to work in small groups and talk about our own experiences and how, as women leaders in the field, we can do a better job of promoting each other and lifting each other up, and talk about ways, actual strategies or tactics to be able to do that.
So what kind of strategies did you learn?
Oh gosh, there's a whole Google Doc full.
There is.
Yeah.
So what?
Are you going to share that with the rest of us?
Actually,
people that couldn't come?
I will put it on the as a session resources on the ELI site. But we started with an empty Google Doc at the beginning of the session that just had some discussion prompts about how to amplify the voices of your colleagues and how to amplify your own voice, how to mentor and become a mentor, and things like that. And then we had the small groups participate and add to the Google Doc Live while it was on screen, and it's a fully open document. So we'll add it to that. We'll add it to the session materials so that other people can access it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
It's a
think
really
I saw
valuable
the
discussion.
document's already been tweeted into the hashtag as well.
Yeah.
So if
yeah.
anybody's interested in pulling that up, it's already out.
Yeah.
Maria, what
That's
was your
good.
favorite takeaway?
I don't. So I wasn't here yesterday, so I have no takeaways from yesterday because I was
She had travel issues.
my travel got messed up. But today, so we started with that sort of keynote this morning, talking about creating the future that we want to see, and then I went straight into the virtual reality session, which was mostly about the ethics of virtual reality, which is something I personally had never worried about before. But now I'm very worried about it because it's almost, I get this feeling that technology is going so fast and we are being dragged along with it in some ways, and we're not thinking about all the ethical implications of the things that we do in that space. So just because there is such virtual reality or augmented reality doesn't mean that we can put anything out there in that space in an irresponsible way. And nobody thinks that they're being irresponsible. So it's been kind of like a morning of introspection for me. Like, am I putting responsible content out there? I mean, obviously, I'm just putting chemistry content, so people are not gonna watch that for funsies. But it kind of made me wonder about the things that you put out there and what are other people gonna make of them, and is that a responsible use of the space, versus let's just do it because we can. So that's been a big morning for me.
And that's really interesting because it actually takes me back to the keynote yesterday, where we had a keynote speaker who was talking about improv in public spaces and that idea. And he didn't really make the educational points as directly as he probably could have. But I mean, I think the point there was that play is good, sandboxes are good. And he was using a lot of examples of basically groups of volunteers going out and doing unexpected things in public spaces. So getting to your point of spaces, what I thought was missing from the keynote yesterday was a discussion of ethics. So who can safely do some of these things in these public spaces? So even like, it wasn't even technology based. I mean, we're looking at like just people in public spaces. Like, for example, he had 75 volunteers go into this building and start dancing in windows. He had 100 people dressed up like Best Buy employees, like go in and just stand around a Best Buy. And it was about how the store respond to that. And like that one, for example, the security guards started freaking out. They actually called 911. And so we started, it wasn't the speaker who brought this up. It was actually people in the audience started bringing this up. Okay, so he's gotten lucky. All of this was unauthorized. Like he didn't get permission from the stores or anything before he did this. But he got lucky that no one has gotten killed, no one's gotten arrested. I mean, there are other things like that he did that could have potentially been dangerous based on who was doing it. And it became very clear as we were watching his videos who felt safe participating, who didn't feel safe participating. You could start making observations of these videos. And that's a very interesting ethical question, all the stuff that you're bringing up, but actually in a physical space that we didn't talk about that either. And I thought that was very striking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I heard other people talk about that keynote and how there were concerns about who gets to do this, and is it the same if a woman does it or a man does it, or a young person versus a more seasoned person, right? So definitely, and this is like the real space. But then in the virtual space, one thing that we talked about this morning is you can do things in the virtual space that you can't do in the real world, right? You can fly, you can be somebody else, you can pretend to be somebody else. So it really, the ethical issues that are going to come out with virtual reality and augmented reality are mind-blowing, and we are dabbling in it as educators, but there is no code of ethics or code of conduct for that space.
Right.
So how important is it to get in at the ground floor and get those rules put in place to say, for example, we need to be diverse in our approach, because virtual reality cannot become a white dominated space or a male dominated space or whatever. I mean, purple people coming in, it has to be diverse, right? But if we don't put in those rules now that we can, because the space is new and not a lot of people are working on it, then it's not going to turn out to be the space that we want to see later on. So there's so much work to do And from my perspective, it was always just the technical challenge of doing it, the technical challenge of doing chemistry in a virtual environment. But it's so much more than that.
And I think that's why you come to a conference like this,
Yeah.
is you want to learn a little bit more about overcoming technical barriers and obstacles. But it's conversations like this that help open our eyes to the other pieces of the puzzle that maybe we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing you say is that we want to create ethics and a diverse perspective on ethics in a technical space so that it doesn't become like our public spaces.
Yes.
Where we didn't actually
But is
have
that even
these
feasible?
conversations.
But is that even feasible, right?
No.
I don't know.
It's
Because
really cool.
we can all agree here at ELI that we're going to have a code of conduct, but are other people going to adopt it? You know, and then somebody was making the sort of tenuous connection with the gaming world, right? There is a code of conduct in game development, apparently. I didn't know this. Where there are things that you're not supposed to do, right? So there are like lines that you're not supposed to cross with violence towards women, with, you know. So they have their own code of conduct, but it's not written down anywhere. It's just that you know you're not supposed to cross this line. Well, we're crossing all lines because there is no lines right now, you know. So it's sort of like that ethical minefield, which kind of takes you back to virtual reality as a space. It's not that different from a classroom as a space. How many times have you seen a teacher that has crossed a line, right? But because we don't know where those, well, I mean, like we know there are things we're not supposed to do,
Right.
but there are things that are borderline, and then who decides?
So because it gets developed, just like language, right?
Yeah.
The game, like I remember it was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago where violence against women was in games, but it was because there was this conversation online and really dominant people in the media talking about it, and then people coming to an agreement of like, okay, we're not going to accept this anymore. I think it's kind of this natural cultural development that you don't really know it's okay until you start actually playing with it and innovating, and then the community builds those values over time.
I think that's exactly right. And I have a slightly radical suggestion, actually, for people who are new to thinking about these things. Go read science fiction. Go read books like Snow Crash, Ready Player One, things like that, where these worlds have already been actively, wildly developed, because then you see a potential future, right? And you see what could happen. And it's all fictional, of course, but it's not that much of a stretch, right?
No, we can all reflect on what happened with Second Life.
Exactly, right. And so, I mean, I personally, I found books like that, Snow Crash in particular, by Neil Stevenson, I think, really mind-blowing. And if you're not a science fiction reader, then it might be think of it more of an academic learning opportunity. But it's really mind-blowing to think about those issues. And, you know, we haven't had the time with virtual reality yet to really sort of adapt our own rule sets. We may not be able to take that time because, like you say, things are moving so fast. Things are becoming so accessible to the wide public so much quicker that we do need to set some boundaries. We do need to set some lines and have some agreed upon rule sets and things like that. But you need to be able to explore what the potentials are to know where the line should be.
I think that's an awesome recommendation, Carly. I think a lot of times I'm very interested in the ethical implications of educational technology specifically, but also social technologies. And I find often the biggest problem is simply a lack of imagination. And I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the imagining has already happened in science fiction kind of environments that are both either utopian or dystopian, right? And realizing that it's fiction and realizing that both of those are extremes is really important. But I do think there are real truths that can be pulled out of those imaginary spaces that can help us to do more than just accept the status quo of the way that these platforms have been designed.
I'd also say that this is an important area to kind of tie the two threads together. This is why we need diverse teams, that we need people who are able to see things from their perspective that other people can't see from theirs. And particularly when we're talking about issues of what's safe, what's I hate the word authentic, but it's the only one I can think of. What's appropriate, what is properly honoring an experience, is why we do need other people. And even if the answer is not to say don't do that, but to say, particularly in higher ed, let's frame it this way, let's debrief it that way, so that it can be a valuable educational experience. I think that's where we need to make sure that conversations are not held only between folks that look like me and Greg and Nate.
Well, that's one of the things about
we do better than most.
the reality sector that I feel that is being populated by very diverse people, just kind of naturally, because you need the expertise from, for example, in our case, we need the science expertise, and then we need the technical expertise. How do we make this work? And then we have an instructional designer. So because the team has to be so big, because I can't do everything by myself, it ends up being a fairly diverse team. And that's helpful because we all are coming at it from a different perspective. And also with different sets of abilities, you know. So the things that we're producing look diverse because we are diverse, and we are diverse because there's so many of us. So there's like that strength in numbers kind of thing that when you're the lone professor teaching in your classroom, it's just you, and it's, you know, and you're policing yourself, which is, but here is a much broader team. And then I'm sorry, I also wanted to add that this morning in the poster session, there seemed to be a whole lot of posters about collaborations between instructional designers and faculty. I don't know if you noticed that. That was like a big theme going on. And I think that's really exciting because it used to be that the instructional design team was one thing and then the faculty member was using their product. And now it looks like there's more cross-pollination in collaboration than I've seen before. So I don't know if you guys noticed that too.
Well, we're even partnered. iDesign just announced yesterday that we partnered with EDUCAUSE to help build out the institutes in an online format. So even EDUCAUSE is changing the way they're looking at access, right? So they'll still always have face-to-face institutes, but there's an opportunity now to reach more people with these leadership programs by making them available in an online format. So, so there's just another example of a collaboration between instructional designers and even EDUCAUSE proper.
That's awesome. I missed that announcement. That's very cool. Congratulations, iDesign.
Thanks, Autumn.
I just wanted to add that I feel like diversity is showing up at this conference on multiple levels and in different ways that I'm finding very interesting. From the very baseline of when you get your stickers, you know, for your badges, there were pronouns available. There are signs about bathroom. Oh yeah, every like interesting new fresh stickers, bathroom signs. You know, this is just baseline space sort of stuff. Then you have all of the conversations at the poster level about diverse teams. Then there's a speaker yesterday who stood up, and the very first thing he said, because he was talking about making psychologically welcome online courses, which was a fabulous session, by the way. All of his stuff is online. You should go get that stuff. But anyway, the first thing he said was, I realized that I'm a white male coming from white privilege, and actually talked about how that impacted the research he was about to present. That was just his thing that he did. So we see it at that like active. So we've got posters talking about it in the past. We have an actual person presenting it in the front of the class or class session, whatever. And you know, we're talking about it in keynotes, but it's coming from multiple perspectives and at different levels. And I'm not sure, I've heard a lot of lip service at other ed tech conferences. I think this is the first time that I've seen it so layered that it's almost an assumption. It's not like a surprise to me.
Well,
I'm
I
seeing
think-
it everywhere.
I think the folks at EDUCAUSE will love to hear that. So shout out to EDUCAUSE for doing a good job with that, because in a meeting I had with Veronica Diaz yesterday and Eden, who made this room possible for us. So shout out to Eden. Thank you. The diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of their core themes that they want to weave into everything that they do, including the institutes that Krista and I were talking with them about yesterday. So I'm glad that it shines through and that you're seeing it. They'll be thrilled to hear.
Well, I mean, just the fact that a lot of the keynote speakers are women. You know, like it's not like the one token woman doing the one session. You know, like there's women everywhere, there's minorities everywhere. You talk to people from many different places, and surprisingly, not everybody is from an academic background. There's a lot of industry people here. So it's just, yeah, it's a really, it feels like a really nice place to just talk to people and just be like, it feels like a very level playing field, you know?
Yeah, and I forgot that as one of the levels, the attendees. You're absolutely right. That's one of the kind of the background levels that I should have put on my list, and now I will.
Yeah, I wasn't able to make it to Eli this year, but I was able to make it to EDUCAUSE proper. And they had a huge like display on the main strip of the conference about diversity, equity, and inclusion. John O'Brien, like the CIO, CEO of EDUCAUSE, came out during the opening session and said, this is one of our, you know, core tenets that we really want to draw out into the open and make, you know, just ubiquitous again, you know, through all of our organizations that we sponsor. I was super impressed there, and it's really wonderful to see that it's trickling through to Eli as well, because I was really impressed at EDUCAUSE as well.
But I haven't even seen any displays about it. It just is.
Right.
You know, so there's no big banner saying we're diverse. We just are diverse.
Yeah,
and the only signs are the ones in the bathroom that
Right.
say just go to whatever bathroom you want to go to, which is.
And if you've ever been to
So yeah, it feels like it is.
And
We're
I'll-
not talking about diverse, we are diverse. Right.
And I will say EDUCAUSE, the proper EDUCAUSE conference, like the big EDUCAUSE conference, if you've never been there before, like Eli's so much smaller in comparison to it. So, I mean, the big EDUCAUSE conference has all kinds of like banners and things like that all over the place. But it was really wonderful. They actually had, it was an iceberg. And it kind of showed that like only a portion of this like kind of shows through, that a lot of it happens under the surface. They had books that were on display. And I think the fact that they had a big display for it was really just more indicative to the size of the conference, because EDUCAUSE proper is just so much bigger.
Although in some ways I find that that's one of the things that I like and miss about ELI is that because you're dealing with a population that's mostly faculty and instructional designers and instructional technologists and librarians, and some very interested and collaborative vendors. I find that that's another area where things equalize out a little bit. That was not my experience. It's been a long time since I've been at the big conference, but there's so much diversity of interest and mission there. That I find, I don't find the community quite as welcoming, in part just because it is so big and different professionally.
I would agree with that. I've been to both, and I would agree with that. There's the size of the national conference it's hard to make those connections, whereas Eli's always been kind of nice because it's like smaller and there's not as many of those big displays, because you have those more opportunity for, I think, for local kind of connections that are smaller and easier to sort of manage.
So in the back channel, Nate reminds me that there's a session coming into this room in 15 minutes. So I want to make sure that particularly anybody who hasn't got to speak and ask a question has a chance to do that.
Could I jump in real quick? So I know you spoke very briefly about the Women in Academic Technology Leadership session, but here in the description at the end it says, explore ways to support, promote, and advance careers for women in this field. And I thought that was was really amazing. And I'd like to know if there was anything in particular of note to ways to promote and support women in academic technology leadership.
Well, you know, as I was a facilitator of the conversation, I didn't get a chance to read through all of the document just yet. So I don't have a solid answer to that, unfortunately. But one of the great things about the conversation there was that it was a really, really open conversation. People were very actively sharing experiences and ideas and riffing off each other. And we tried to capture as much as possible in the open Google Doc that we have. So maybe somehow we can share the bit.ly URL to the virtually connected community so you can access that and add to it. It is a fully open Google Doc, so everybody please be nice. But I mean, the idea was to make sure that all of the voices get heard in some way or another. So
it'd be amazing to see that.
To eat real quick in 10 minutes and then to hear. So I haven't had a chance to sort of debrief just yet.
Well, having been in the session, just my group of 5 individuals, we did have a gentleman in our group. So I thought that that was an interesting point to make, that we were talking about diversity earlier. We had all mix of women, our 4 women, none of us were similar. That's helpful. But then we also had a man in the room, and his points around the table as we were talking were very relevant to how he helps to raise up women's voices in his own institution. He respects and recognizes that he needs to be quieter at times to make the space for women to feel safe to add to the conversation. And I think one of the big points that was made, there were several, but one of the big points that came away that one of the other groups mentioned was back channeling encouragement to your colleagues during a meeting when you can tell they have something they want to add to the conversation, but they're hesitant to speak.
Yep. Those back channels are really important. Sometimes you really need to know that people have your back, even if it's just, you know, a text message during faculty meeting or something.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Somebody needs to write a paper about that. What back channeling means for women in men's spaces.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that came from Lee over in the corner with
Maybe,
Angela.
yeah.
Who have we not heard from?
Well, I think we have a new person that joined us too.
Yeah.
I'm concerned though, because they are just about to start a session in here, so we should probably clear out.
Yeah. Sadiq, I'm sorry, I seem to have had an email fail to get you to join us, but why don't you at least say hello and who you are?
Why don't you introduce yourself at least, Sadiq?
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
Speak up a little bit, yeah.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Sadiq from Ghana. I'm a member of Wikimedia Ghana User Group and the Creative Commons Ghana chapter. We work in advancement of Creative Commons and then Wikimedia projects. We one of the projects we do right now is Art Plus Feminism, which has to do with updating and improving the content of women on Wikipedia, which will be happening in March. And just this Saturday, we'll be doing another Wikipedia workshop on parliamentarians in Ghana. So we are just trying to update the biographies of parliamentarians in Ghana on Wikipedia. So basically, that is what we do. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
And I think we're trying to get some connecting sessions from that Wikipedia, if I remember correctly, from Slack, right? So keep your eye out for that.
Okay, we should definitely
We need to let you wrap up. All right. Well, thanks so much for taking time to let us know how things are going. And this has been Virtually Connecting. We will stop the broadcast. Thanks.